But as my confidence built and I had the proof, because I do believe confidence comes from past evidence, got more and more confident to say Manic Stage Productions is mine. And the same thing has happened with PerformerPreneur.
Welcome to Reclaim Your Voice, a podcast for women in business who are ready to lead with more clarity, more ownership, and more confidence in who they already are. I'm Savannah Madden, confidence coach, public speaker, and the founder of award-winning theatre school Madden Theatre Arts. This is not about becoming someone new, it's about returning to your voice and leading in a way that feels aligned. Here we explore confidence, leadership, visibility, business growth, and the real shifts that happen as you evolve. If you know you're capable of more, you're in the right place. This is Reclaim Your Voice. Hello and welcome back to the show. I am so delighted today to be joined by an incredible guest who is the founder of PerformerPreneur. So Nicole Louise Geddes, welcome to Reclaim Your Voice.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. It is lovely to have you. So I always start every guest show with a very similar sort of question, which is if someone is listening today who hasn't come across you before, or hasn't heard very much about you before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, who you serve, what you do? It would be great to know.
Absolutely. It's a tricky one because I have been so many versions of me and I do so many things. I'm sure many people listening can relate. I am a past professional performer. Let's start there. So you and I have got a lot in common. I had a wonderful performing career that I actually exited prematurely because of some realizations quite early on in my professional performance career, all of the wonderful things I did. But I realized quite early on that I wanted to lead rather than be taught and told. So backline directed on a kick line wasn't really for me. I wanted to be the person that was leading the way and doing all of the things. So I pivoted quite early, and we'll probably talk about that because that's where my confidence actually disappeared because I felt like I'd failed. Even though I was being true to myself, I created a business called Manic Stage Productions, which is in its 21st year. So that shows you the length of everything that I've done. And I set off on an entrepreneurial journey with no entrepreneurial skills, just this determination, this understanding of what I wanted to do, this feeling of growth and evolving. And that is 21 years this year. It's an incredible business. But obviously at the turn up of COVID, that was very much stopped. It just stopped like everything did in the world. But my business, Manic Stage Productions, at that point primarily produced entertainment for cruise ships. So it not only stopped along with the rest of the world, it was the last part of the puzzle to come back to life. So entertainment was very close to the last thing. And then cruise ships were even further down the line than that. I had a very emotional period of time where I had to pivot, as many of us did. And in that time, I created PerformerPreneur. And that came from this real empathy and understanding that I was actually surviving COVID because I'd had all this entrepreneurial understanding and I developed these skills and I was able to rebuild something new. But what was happening around me was that so many entertainers and performers, my core group of team members, primarily, but then it extended out to over 2,000 people coming to join this kind of momentum that I created to teach them how to use their skills and diversify. And performers, I genuinely believe, make the best entrepreneurs because of all of the transferable skills. And it was kind of a case of teaching them that belief and building their confidence to go and pivot and create businesses. So that business is now 6 years old. And I serve and support performers considering a pivot, halfway through a pivot, transitioning, not transitioning, unsure, sure, confident, not confident, to build businesses or spotlights in any direction that they choose. And I'm just kind of their cheerleader and their support network. And alongside that, a whole community of people that are doing similar things. Because I do believe community is the key to confidence and success.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more on that last comment, 100%. And I think because of COVID and the pandemic, now that we've kind of come through it, people have either pivoted, built back their businesses or whatever scenario they're in, we're now really craving community more than ever. Like everyone wants to be in the room with others, don't they? Want to be at in-person events and VIP days, in-person days, networking. And because I know as well, you organise a networking event where you go and watch a show and get together with a group of business owners. Is that right?
Yes, PerformerPreneur matinee mixer. And basically exactly what you said. I knew what I needed. And so each time I've pivoted and created a new business or a new identity or a new kind of stage or something, it's always been very apparent to me that it's something that I need or that I want and that I am hearing from myself. This particular networking event was exactly what I knew I needed. I needed to be back in the room, like you say, so many of us do. I need it to be people that feel and think and express themselves in the same way as I do. There's definitely places and people for all different parts of our life and our business. But this particular desire was that the people that came together all had the same energy and creativity as me. And the other thing I needed was West End magic, because I've actually been living abroad for a few years and theatre was very limited and I just missed it so much. And so I thought, right, let's just put it all together, see who's attracted to that. And such a variety of people and entrepreneurs and performers have stepped forward and have said it's absolutely the networking that they need. It's very informal, very relaxed. And then we end with West End musical and magic. Like there's nothing better than that to just leave on a buzz.
Absolutely. I'm coming to the next one because there's nothing quite like the London West End, is there? I'm very fortunate that I've seen one show on Broadway. And although that was also magical, there is just something about London, isn't there? And about the West End and about mainly British performers that we have on our stages. It's just, yeah, it's just amazing. So that just sounds right up my street as well. So there's a couple of things that I want to pick up on. First of all, congratulations on your 21st year in your first business. That is just absolutely amazing. And I so resonated with you when you said that you didn't have any sort of business entrepreneurial skills at first. And then you obviously realized that so many of your skills were transferable. And I see it as well, that performers just don't really realize how much they've got in their toolkit until someone kind of explains it to them and, you know, points things out so that it's much clearer for them to pick up on. But what I would love to explore a little bit more with you is if we kind of go back, and I don't want to keep on talking about the pandemic and all of that, but obviously it is a really big moment in your career where you did decide to pivot. And in the performing arts industry, as you highlighted, it was so long to come back. But what made you realize that you could actually create something brand new in this really, really tricky time? And what gave you the impetus to push forwards and do it?
A great question. And it comes down to what I said about the matinee mixer and what I said about starting Manic Stage Productions and leaving the industry. It's what I needed. I felt very alone at that point. I'm sure many of us did. And it was a scary time for all industries. And then I also had a team of performers that I felt were looking at me to kind of for the answers. And I didn't have them. Nobody had them. But what I truly believe and has always been a very big value of mine is collaboration over competition. And I just really thought I need to feel supported and seen. And yes, I've got a wonderful husband, I've got a lovely family, I've got friends, but people in the industry were feeling what I was feeling. And so it was just an instinct to bring everybody together and say, look, if you're feeling what I'm feeling, let's feel it together because it doesn't feel so scary and so alone. And I opened a Facebook group and I went live every single day for 3 months. I had my eyelashes on at 10 a.m. Everyone else was in the garden, weren't they? Like, so kind of sunning it and doing nothing. Probably frantically, half worried, half happy. Like it was a very strange time, but it was me, my eyelashes on, ready to go to bring everybody together to feel supported. So it was selfish to start with, really. I wanted to not feel so alone. But from that, it just had such a ripple effect. And then my business instinct kicked in and I thought, you know what, like this is more than a support and more than a community. This is a program. This is a membership. This is, you know, things that's got longevity. And I was teaching and telling the performers to diversify, find income streams. And it was very apparent to me that I had to lead and show them what was absolutely possible if you took that chance and you went in a different direction, you pivoted. There was opportunities to be had in all good and bad situations.
Amazing. And what's it been like for you to kind of like for your identity to evolve? Because it's quite a strong identity, isn't it, being a performer? And we were just talking before we hit record about how so many people in the performing arts industry only see themselves as a performer and can get quite sort of tunnel vision because you do dedicate most of your childhood, a lot of your early adult life to being a performer, training, working your socks off, getting an agent, putting yourself forward for auditions, getting your agent to put yourself forward. Like, it is a massive part of your life to then have things taken away from you, or, not just the pandemic, people might decide that it's not for them anymore, or they might get injured. There are so many things that can make you pivot. So how has your identity evolved from performer to entrepreneurs? What do you see in your clients, and what obstacles do they have to overcome to evolve their identity when they're creating a second business from performing?
It was easier to get the message across and to have people support their own evolution in the pandemic. It was kind of a necessity.
Mm,
When that's been stripped back again, so 6 years down the line, there's a bit more security in the performing industry, which I love. Like, I want people that want to pursue that career to whatever extreme for however long. I want them to have those opportunities and that security. But in that sense, it feels very much like if I rewind to 21 years ago when I left the industry and pursued a different path, feels like we're very much back there. The narrative seems to me to be, you have to keep going. Like, you're failed if you haven't, side hustle means you're not dedicated enough to your actual, talents and things. And it's a very harmful narrative because it's not true. And people, for whatever reason, like you just suggested, illness, injury, marital status, just identity. There's so many reasons
yeah.
that people would want to stop performing, and to feel that you have to keep pursuing a dream that you set out on when you were 5, 10, 15, 21, in your 40s, for instance, seems ridiculous to me. Like, we're allowed to evolve. But it's a difficult one for myself included, and I can, personally relate to it in my 20s when I decided to step back from performing and create Manic Stage Productions, which is a production company. I felt like I'd failed, and I think I'm hearing that from the people who are, and let's be honest, it's not reams and reams of people that are holding their hand up and asking for my support. It's trickles. It's, you have to get there in your own time. But when they do step forward, I hear the same thing. Like, it feels like they've lost their identity. It feels like they're being judged, or they're having to prove themselves again, to themselves and to their peers and to their parents. And they've invested so much time and energy that it feels kind of counterintuitive to follow a different purpose and passion. For a long time, Manic Stage Productions was faceless. It was Manic Stage Productions. It had a beautiful team of performers. We met every week. I created a community. There was professional level classes on the South Coast that then, turned into opportunities, paid gigs, cruise ship contracts, all of this stuff, but nobody knew it was me. Nobody knew it was me. Manic Stage Productions was just that. It was faceless. And what I've learned over the years is you can only build a business so far with a faceless business, because people buy from people. And when I finally built the confidence up, and it was lack of confidence to say that it was mine, I was a failed performer in my eyes. So who was I to say that I'd created something that was, yes, doing so well, but it just felt so wrong for it to be mine. But as my confidence built and I had the proof, because I do believe confidence comes from past evidence, as I was, getting these contracts, as these girls and these team members were flying and crediting me for everything that I'd done in the behind the scenes, got more and more confident to say Manic Stage Productions is mine. And so the same thing has happened with PerformerPreneur. Who am I to tell people to pivot? Who am I to lead that way? But then I reflect 20 years in business. I have this heartache, I have the experience, I have the highs, I have the lows. And it's not about me being the person for everybody. It's about me showing up and being confident enough in my past experiences and in my understanding of my own journey that I might be the right person for somebody else. And so, in terms of the question of evolving an identity, it's scary every single time. It's scary, but who am I to deny myself the joy that it brings from doing what my heart wants me to go and do, and also to deny those people that it might actually help? So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. It's gone quite deep, but yeah, it all comes down to my heart.
So, when you talk about having to build your confidence back up again, can you identify any sort of things that you did? Because I think you said something like your confidence grows, from looking back on like past things that have happened and as you evolve and things. Can you remember anything that you did specifically that helped you to grow your confidence so that you could take your next step in business?
There's monumental moments where I don't think at the time I even acknowledged or understood how incredible they were or how big they were. But what did happen was I got took under the wing of another local entrepreneur. So I'm from the South Coast, before Portsmouth originally. Just networking, finding a group of people, daring to step out my comfort zone and going to find, when you don't have the answers to things, I'm a strong believer you need to find the information, be that online or through a community, through networking. And so I was very inquisitive and curious of how to be better. And so I did join networking groups and kept very quiet at the back. No one really knew who I was or why I was there at first, but I did get taken under the wing. And I think that's a real big pivotal moment in the building of my confidence, when somebody else believes in you, somebody else can see what you're doing is successful and points it out to you. And that was within the first few years. I speak about Louise often. She's still a very good friend of mine. She's a few years ahead of me. She's in a very different industry, but she was pointing it out. And very early on, that formed how I wanted to build Manic and then PerformerPreneur and the matinee mixers and everything. I just think having a community and people around you that lift you up, that point you in the right direction, that highlight the things that you're maybe overlooking because life's busy and you don't necessarily believe. Because back to that statement of confidence comes from past evidence, we don't often look for it ourselves. We're too busy moving to the next thing or worrying about the next thing or comparing. So to have somebody in those early stages point out those achievements, point out those successes, does help build your confidence. And I want to be that person who Louise was for me, for anybody that needs it.
Yeah. And also, it's feeling safe enough to step out of your comfort zone so that you can get into that stretchy bit where the growth lies, knowing that you've got a team of people or a community of people who are there sort of cheering you on. I think that's just so important, isn't it? And also having a mentor or a coach, these these steps really help us to build our confidence when we're trying to reach new heights or impact more people and help more people and add value and guide people to more of their successes as well. So I think those are really, really good markers to always come back to, because sometimes they sound quite sort of obvious. Of course I'm going to have a whole team of people or a group of people around me, or, if I'm not quite sure how to do something, of course I'm going to ask a mentor or a coach or a trusted person. But sometimes we get so stuck in the weeds, don't we, that we can't always see some of the things that might be quite like, yeah, of course I would do that. And do you think that part of evolving as our identity shift as we grow in business, is it also, like, from your perspective, do you find it that it's also like giving yourself permission to grow as well? Because I think some people like to just keep themselves where they are because it's a bit safer and can't always take that moment of courage to step forward out of their comfort zone. So do you feel like you ever just made like a conscious decision, or were you just so far in it you just kept going?
I have over the years paused, because I think responsibility as you get older kicks in. If you imagine 21 years ago, I was 22. So it was easy for me to kind of give it up and start again in one respect, because the responsibilities around me were less. Now I'm a parent, I'm a wife, I'm just moved back from another country. So I've got to rebuild aspects of my life again for my family. I'm very much the person that holds all of that together whilst we're changing schools and jobs and things like that. So there would be moments in the 20 odd years where I've paused, because each time it feels a little bit scarier to push those boundaries again. But I always come back to what that 21-year-old did, that 22-year-old did, and she just did it. And so I
Yeah.
have to remind myself of the success that came from that tenacity, and just go, what is the worst that can happen? And again, it comes back to community, and that community can be extended or it can be family. Like for me, when I'm making those decisions, what's the worst that can happen? My husband will support me. My child will be proud of me. I will do everything I can to make sure that, the other things in my life still move in the direction that they're stood and they should. But it's a joint effort, and I never do anything on my own, even though, my business is mine. It's always very much integrated with family, friends, peers, mentors, community people. And I just think that, I know most of your listeners aren't performers, but it baffles me, because as a performer, we don't put a show on our own. Yeah, there's all of the people involved: director, choreographer, backstage crew, marketers. It's all of this. We're one small part of that whole production. And so I feel like I've taken that understanding and used that in my adult life, more so with the more that I kind of really think that community and people create that safe spotlight to shine in. And you wouldn't do a show on your own. So we have to stop doing that. But funnily enough, I think performers are the worst at asking for help in the first stages, because again, we're so competitive by nature because of the auditions. But if we step out of the audition, once you're in the show, there's so many people making that work, that I do think we need to get back to that mentality. And I'm sure it's the same for all industries. It's not easy on your own.
Definitely. But I felt so seen in so many of those moments. And also, right back to the beginning of that answer that you were giving, as soon as you said about, I think back to my 21-year-old, the first word that came out in my head was tenacious. And then you were like having that tenacity, and I was like, yes, I just really wanted to share that, because that was exactly what I was thinking. But more to your point about not doing things on your own, there are so many people that just cannot ask for help. And I'm always saying that asking for help and getting more eyes on your business, or more eyes on your ideas, your creations, whatever that might be, is just the way forward. So I also have a theatre school, which has grown over the last sort of 6 years. And I've got a team now, an office team and a coaching team. And it has taken a lot of, evolving of my identity to be like, yeah, I can do it all by myself, strong, independent woman. But it's like, no, you don't need that identity. You need that, come on, everybody, let's come together. Let's bring all the best ideas together. Because I put on a show just a few days ago, and there was one member of my team doing underscoring for the scenes. There was another member of the team doing all the scheduling. There was another member of the team doing something else, and it was great because everyone had a role, and it just made everything run so much more smoothly. And I just want to loop back a little bit now to, you mentioned earlier that, you took a step back from your career in your 20s from performing, and you felt like, you felt like a failure. And I mean, I also identify with that, and know so many people that are also in a very similar situation. So what did it feel like for you when you were in that moment and you had that worry about people seeing you differently, or that you didn't quite identify in the same way that you have? Because being a performer is such like a label almost, isn't it? But was it just an internal thing for you, or was it external as well, worried about what other people thought about your decision and thought about what your next steps were?
I think it was definitely more external,
Mm,
because I'd made the decision. I was happy with the decision. And it wasn't until the other side of the decision, because obviously I made it, I took the leap. I procrastinated over it for a little while, took another couple of contracts, and I did the two side by side for a little while as well. It didn't just explode and become this big business straight away. There was some side hustling going on while I made the transition. But it was definitely, I was comfortable with the idea until the idea was happening, and then it was everybody else. And again, I'm going to come back to it, and it's only in these past sort of few years that I've really understood this past version of me and these feelings. But I'd had no community at that point. I wasn't identifying as a performer in its entirety, and I wasn't in the entrepreneur world surrounded by business people either. I was flying solo at that point, and that's where the insecurity came from, because I was a little bit lost in who I had around me. I didn't quite fit over there anymore because I had given it up. I had stepped away. I had chosen a different path. And so, that was met enthusiastically or not. I don't know. I didn't stick around long enough to find out how it would be received. It was then just something that I thought was being spoken about or thought that was being said. But I wasn't also at this point surrounded by people that were encouraging me either. It was that limbo. Again, fast forward to the pandemic, it's very obvious to me now why I started PerformerPreneur. I didn't want people to feel like that. Like, we're all in limbo. Let's be in limbo together, because I had very real experience of feeling that way. So yeah, it was very much what I thought other people thought, and not having anybody to counteract those voices in my own head of what I was believing that other people were saying. Then they become your own thoughts and it's your own voice. And then I felt like a failure because I thought that people were saying, I had nobody, contradicting that or pointing out otherwise. So then it just becomes this little void of nonsense in your head, and you have to get out of your head. And it's hard. It's hard to get out of your head on your own. It's hard to be who you want to be without the support, I think, whoever you get that from.
And for someone listening now who knows they want to expand or pivot or create something new alongside what they're doing or whatever it is, but feels, that sort of stuck or overwhelmed, what would you recommend is their first step forward?
Every emotion is a clue is something that I often say to my clients. Like, if it's exciting, then that's a clue that you're doing something right. If your heart is happy, then you're doing something right. Like, explore that. What is it? But equally, if something is niggling or feels uncomfortable or you're not happy with, then that's a clue too. So I think my first tip would be get curious and get honest with how you're feeling and what's making you feel that way. And then the second tip would be take that vulnerable evidence and look around you as to who is doing something that you aspire to or feels to you like they've got something that they could share with you, and then start to build and collect those people. And it's really difficult, isn't it? Because I'm sure your listeners are thinking, well, support and coaching, it all costs money. And at that pivotal moment where you're moving into a new era or a new spotlight or a new thing, it might feel like I'd said previously, that's the point where it, there's a lot of responsibility, like you can't just go. But I think there's really simple ways to start, and it's finding those little groups of conversations in coffee shops, or another parent at the school gate might have a business or doing something that you think, have a chat there. Join something that's a little bit less formal, like the matinee mix. I'm sure you've got opportunities for people to step forward and speak to you in a less formal way, and then that curiosity then cements, and then you invest and you get those support networks around you that we've spoken about.
I think that's such great advice, and it's being innovative about using your curiosity to find these different ways of being able to move forward, because it is really tough when there is investment to make. If you want really structured support from people who've been through the same sort of thing or have the expertise, etc., I think that's really good advice. I also really want to ask you about your fabulous book, Nicole. So, Spotlight on Success, which is a collab between lots of other wonderful performers and entrepreneurs. And I would just love to know a bit more about where the idea came from, what the process was like, and with all the collaborations, how did it all work and what happened?
I'm an ideas person, as I'm sure you are, and I'm sure many of the listeners are. Like, there's an idea pops up in my head most nights that stop me from sleeping. This particular idea did not leave my head for a long time, but it started off as, it wasn't a solo project, that would be the wrong term, but it started off as a me thing. Like, I want people to know there's other opportunities. Like, that's my ethos, that's the message of Performerpreneur. What do these opportunities look like? How are you going to start them? But it never sat comfortably as a me thing. So it never got kind of put into process, until I decided that all of my values actually create this book. My value of community, collaboration, sharing the spotlight, like, these are all things that are really important to me. And I've looked back on the 20 years, and it's very apparent in everything that I've done that it's a joint effort. We all rise together. And actually, one person shouting into the parapet about stepping out of your comfort zone, shining in a new spotlight, pivoting, just doesn't land with that many people. And I so strongly want those that need to hear it to believe that there's opportunity for them outside of the industry. That the only way that I was going to reach more people is if I brought more people with me on the journey to shout about it too. But funnily enough, that confidence kind of slipped away at that point when I thought, I've got no evidence to believe that, anyone's going to want to shout about the fact they've pivoted from performing, because it took me at this point 20 years to be that comfortable shouting about pivoting from performing. So who else is going to feel like that? You look around, and not many, more people now than they used to be, not many people were comfortable to say, I was a performer and now I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So anyway, long story short, I kind of just put the feelers out and said, is anyone else feeling my mission? Has anyone else got this kind of value that I have, that here's what I'm saying, and it's nothing right now. Like, the people that step forward just genuinely trusted, and I'm so humbled. They just heard what I had to say. There was no big sales page, sales pitch. It was like, this is what I want to do. Anyone feeling this with me? And gosh, these people stepped forward, and the confidence then came from the community again, and the evidence that it was actually a message that people believed needed to be said, not just me. And the joy and the happiness of doing that with other people far exceeds my first book of doing it on my own. Like, this is important. This is amazing, collaborative. So that's the book. It was a midnight dream that I sat with. The emotion of not wanting to pursue it, that kind of triggered some curiosity. Why? It's such a great message. Like, why am I not doing this now? I opened up this kind of conversation with myself that I didn't want to do it on my own. It wasn't going to be impactful enough on my own. Right, let's start putting the feelers out. Who else feels what I do? And then we got the best-selling book last June. And this year we are adding 4 additional chapters in, and we're going for a second edition. Rather than another book, I don't want this first book to lose momentum. I want more people to come into this book year on year, maybe. I don't know, I've not got that far. But this year we're adding 4 extra chapters, second edition. We're launching it again, and it's going to be available in Waterstones, which is super exciting.
Congratulations, that's fantastic. And are we allowed to know who these 4 other people are, or is that under wraps?
Well, keep an eye on my socials. We're introducing them. Their chapters have just been submitted to the editors, their final drafts. And so now it's all about the marketing and getting that into the system so that it can be, bought in Waterstones. How cool is that?
That is so cool. That is really cool. And I love that you have got more evidence to keep backing things up, because that's a pretty strong one. 4 more people coming into the fold, a new location to stock your book. Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations. You must be so happy with that. It's just brilliant. I highly recommend it. It's absolutely great read. Get yourself on Amazon. You can purchase it as well, Nicole. Is that right? As well as it's going to be in Waterstones.
Yes, yeah. So Amazon at the moment, and then the second edition will all be released, and you can go buy it in the shops as well as on Amazon. I don't know many people from our industry that have done that. So again, just trying to lead that one and show, not going back to exactly that, just showing what is possible with our creativity, with our community. Anything is possible.
And this podcast is called Reclaim Your Voice, and we haven't necessarily spoken literally about how you would use your voice, but everything we've talked about today is all about speaking up, trying to find other people that are on board with you and feel the same things as you, collaborate, bring people together. It's all about using your voice and speaking up and talking about things that are really important to you. And I don't know what's more on brand about using your voice and speaking up than writing a book, really, quite frankly. So yeah, absolutely incredible. And so for anyone that is listening right now, we've obviously explained how to find your book, but if they resonated and would like to connect with you and they aren't already, where are you hanging out? Where can we find you?
I've got a website that isn't all about me. It's about everybody that's kind of in my world and my circles that you can tap into too. It's performerpreneur.co.uk. I've got some associates on there with different skills, different niches, different backgrounds that you might find you want support with websites or systems, AI, dance school coaching. There's so many people that I've brought into my circle. So go check that out, because again, it's not about me, it's about you and how you can get what you need from the people that I can bring to you. And I'm on Instagram at PerformerPreneur. I'm just doing my little thing over there. It's a bit erratic. It's got so many different things going on. But those people that are drawn to that will absolutely love it.
Yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. I really resonate with that too. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nicole. You have given so many fantastic nuggets of information. It's been lovely to hear more about you and your career over the last 20 years or so. And so thank you so much. And we're excited for the next 4 chapters of the book too. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, I'm privileged.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Reclaim Your Voice. If today's conversation resonated, then head to the show notes where you'll find my free audio gift. And if this episode helped you in any way, it would mean so much if you shared it, rated or reviewed the show. That support helps these conversations reach the people who really need them. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.